All right, so somebody asked me a really good question. They asked me, how is it that people are, you know, in my last video I talked about people are opening up vortexes for you, or other people could be tools for you, and this is how I'm going to explain it. All right, so I watch UFC. It's the only thing I watch. I don't watch TV. I don't watch any kind of sports, right? But I watch UFC. Now with UFC, I'll put this as an example. All right, the UFC being the big organization, that big energy vortex. Let's say there's people trying to access it, or people within the organization trying to access more out of the organization. Okay, it's always going to be a win-win, because see, if the promoters or the organization see an opportunity for money making, then they'll jump on it, and it's going to be beneficial for the individual, because the individual is also making money out of it, which is the physical representation of money. See, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, okay? The women's division, there's men's and women's division. The women's division, all right, goes up to 135. Now, there's a fighter by the name of Chris Cyborg, who happens to come from another organization, okay? And she was so good that, you know, they allowed her into the UFC, but she couldn't drop down to 135. So she walks around at 185. For her to drop to 150 was dreadful. You could watch videos of her and it looks like she's dying, okay? So they made a 145-pound division for her. They made a belt for that division, and she started fighting people, right? And she started knocking people out, right? But they opened that doorway for her, and women who were bigger, who really had a harder time dropping to the 135-pound division, fought at the 145, tried to fight the best, because to be the best, you got to beat the best. So they tried to fight Cyborg, they got knocked out. But now, the 135-pound division, Amanda Nunes, all right, she beat the best, which happens to be, she beat, she beat Ronda Rousey, she beat Holly Holmes, she beat Misha Tate, and she beat them in spectacular fashion. But now, she's the champion in the 135-pound division. But now the fact that the 145-pound division is open, she has an opportunity now to be the champ, the double champ, all right? Which she did. And she ended up beating Chris Cyborg by knocking her out too. So the fact that Cyborg came into the division and they opened something up for her specifically because she was so good, it gave an opportunity for the 135-pound champion, Amanda Nunes, to fight for that 145-pound, because she was able to go up in weight class. And she became the champ. But if it wasn't for Chris Cyborg, there would have never been a 145-pound division for Amanda Nunes to be the champ. In actuality, she was so good that Chris Cyborg doesn't even fight in the UFC anymore. They didn't even want to renew her contract. All right? So that's how energy vortexes are opened, or opportunities are opened through other people. All right? In ways that you never know. And I'll give you more examples. Let's say if the youngest person I've seen fight in the UFC is 20 years old, okay? Let's say, for example, there's kids that fight and they're really good. They're good on the mic and they catch a lot of attention, right? Let's say they became an internet sensation, right? Because this is how Kimbo Slice got into the UFC, all right? Kimbo Slice was a backyard fighter. Jorge Masvidal was a backyard fighter, and he's actually the top star in the UFC, all right? Now, let's say, they decided to open a age bracket between 15 to 21 for this kid, okay? And they let him into the UFC. Now there's other kids that are training, and they're going to train even harder now to try to get into the UFC. And they don't have to wait till they're like, let's say 20 or 21 for them to be in the UFC. They can get in now instantly, okay? Because it's a readily available energy vortex, readily open for them to access and make money. And the promotion makes money now too, because now it brings in more exposure, all right? Do you notice how there's fighters of certain countries, all right, that, because they're good and they're backed up by a huge country. Look at Conor McGregor. You see how many, he has the whole country of Ireland coming to see him. That benefits the organization. You get what I'm saying? Just because of his ethnic background or whatnot. All right? So Russia, you got Khabib Nurmagomedov, all right? They became huge stars, you know? Khabib became a huge star, but he also has a very strong mind. If you look at his physique, he's not the strongest. He doesn't look like he's the most physically imposing UFC fighter. But what makes him strong is his will, his mind. A guy like Conor McGregor who gets into people's minds couldn't even penetrate him. You know what I mean? So that's just, you know, how that part works. Life is an art. Mixed martial arts is an art, right? Now, when I spoke and mentioned in my last video about how I go up and down, all right, just even look at how UFC is. Life is an art, but so is mixed martial arts, right? You notice how when somebody's fighting and both fighters are standing and they're slugging it out with each other with fists, what happens when somebody goes to take somebody down? That's called a level change, right? So this is what you do. You level change. Sometimes when you see certain changes in certain people, they're going through level changes. Sometimes I may be striking. Sometimes I may be going for the takedown. All right. Either way you put it, I'm going to make sure I'm winning though. So if you see some changes in people, it could be bad or good. Don't judge the book by its cover. The person's going to work. All right. When you experience those highs, you got to experience those lows too. See, the vortex that we talk about, when you talk about law of attraction, they talk about always being in the bliss and the upper, you know, vortex, which is basically telling you about love. Love is a frequency nobody even understands. So when they're there, they don't even know what the hell that is. All right. Now, you have love, you have bliss. All these things are very addictive the same way, you believe it or not. Fear, anger, all that is very addictive as well. All right. They talk about the neutral. The neutral is basically right in the middle. You don't notice that? Neutral is somewhere in the middle. But as the neutral, you're the observer. You can basically manage yourself where you go. That's basically the real God mode. See, people look at the vortex like this, but why don't you look at the vortex horizontally instead of vertically? Where you can go left and right. What do you say? Let's say if the vortex is like this. What do you say? The you know, the bliss, the happiness is on my right side, and then you have the hate, fear, anger on my left side. So that's the left hand, right? But what happens if I change my point of view and my position to be on the other side of that vortex? Now, that other negative polarity you would have called is on my right side, and the positive is on my left, right? But it's basically you need to be and do what you need to do based on the things that are going on and what you need, because sometimes you may need the lower ones, which are strong emotions, to channel certain things that you want. People think projects, it starts from a thought. So that's why it's a project starts from a projection first, right? So you take that projection first. See, there's a lot of people also, you know, I'm gonna go through a level change right now. There's people who are in their ego, very, very egotistical, right? And, you know, for some reason, you know, the universe is always working for you, okay? And this is the thing. If you know where you're at, let's say you're at your neutral point, okay? You know where you're going. You know where you need to go, all right? Because some people get so blinded by, you know, and this is why I say like the bliss and all that is good. I'm not saying that it's bad, all right? Or favorable or unfavorable. But if you really want to look at it, look at what people, let's say if they're in a relationship that they know it's not good for them, but they're just so blinded by the fucking, the lustly, well, not the lust, but let's say the honeymoon phase and all that. And then it's just basically a distraction from off their path, all right? And then when they're like, fear is addictive as well, because if you look at fear, look at people, how many people like scary movies, right? People go watch scary movies. People like going to haunted houses and all that. That's an adrenaline rush. And there's people who like pain, right? And some people aren't even aware of the fact that they like pain. That's why they're experiencing certain things in their life. This is why certain people are experiencing certain things of fear, anxiety, is because of their addiction to it, and they don't realize it. They don't realize it. And this part of getting to know yourself. All right. So the thing is that it's good to navigate. You're navigating up and down wherever you need to go. It just shows signs of life. If you're in a hospital bed, it goes beep, beep, beep. It goes up and down, right? But when you're dead, you flatline. So it shows signs of life. If you're experiencing, that's the experiments. But how good are these experiments when you can consciously make these things happen to influence and impact something else? Now, this is why it's important to be this is what consciousness is. This is consciousness, okay? Because people talk about consciousness, it's really not understood. But if you really want to look at a very important part of consciousness, is knowing that people are there. And I'm going to have to make a part 2 because the fucking camera's going to cut off, man.